Imagine, if you will, a ship. No ordinary ship, but a vessel that's been sailing through the annals of philosophy as a ghost haunting the seven seas of human understanding. Today, we are hijacking the Ship of Theseus, steering it through the choppy waters of thought, and asking, if we replace every piece of the ship, is it still the same ship? This is the Ship of Theseus, an ancient Greek puzzle that's been making philosophers scratch their head, spill their wine, and question their very existence for millennia. The Ship of Theseus is a thought experiment that hails from the storied world of ancient Greece, a time when philosophers grappled with the fundamental questions of existence, identity, and change. In this intellectual climate, the paradox was first introduced by the philosopher Plutarch in his Life of Theseus, though the exact origins remain shrouded in mystery. The paradox itself is tied to the legendary figure of Theseus, the mythical founder-king of Athens. Theseus, renowned for rescuing the children of Athens from King Minos and slaying the Minotaur, made his triumphant escape aboard this very ship to Delos. To celebrate Theseus' heroism and honour Apollo, the Athenians annually took the ship on a pilgrimage to Delos. However, as the years turned to centuries, the decaying planks of Theseus' ship were gradually replaced until, to paraphrase Plutarch, no part of the original ship remained. This meticulous preservation and renewal process presents us with a compelling paradox. After several hundred years of maintenance, with each individual piece of the Ship of Theseus replaced, was it still the same ship that carried Theseus on his heroic adventures and celebrated his victories? As our ship sails through time, we encounter various ports of philosophical thought. Our first stop is the ancient docks of Heraclitus, the pre-Socratic philosopher whose insights lay the foundational waves of our voyage. Heraclitus famously declared, "No man ever steps in the same river twice." This statement encapsulates his view that the universe is in a state of constant flux, with everything undergoing ceaseless change, making stability and permanence mere illusions. For Heraclitus, then, the Ship of Theseus becomes simply a metaphor for the ever-changing nature of reality. Just as a river's waters are forever flowing and renewing, so too is every component of the Ship of Theseus, from its timbers to its sails. The ship that departs the port will never truly return, for during its journey it will traverse the river of time, experiencing a countless change in structure and essence. In other words, in Heraclitean thought, the notion that the Ship of Theseus could remain fundamentally the same despite the replacement of all of its parts is a reflection of our human desire for permanence in a world defined by change. The belief in an unchanging essence or identity, whether it be a ship or oneself, is a misunderstanding of the fundamental nature of reality. As we navigate through the stormy waters of thought, we're anchored next to Aristotle. According to Aristotle, every tangible thing in the world is composed of both matter, the substance out of which it is made, and form, the arrangement or pattern that defines what it is. Consider a bronze statue. Its matter is the bronze itself, while the form is the shape that gives it identity as a statue. And by applying this distinction to the Ship of Theseus, it's clear that for Aristotle, the wooden planks constitute the matter, and the design or structure that makes it a ship represents its form. So for Aristotle, the essential question becomes, does the ship maintain its identity through the replacement of its matter, so long as its form remains constant? And the answer is yes. In this view, the essence of a thing is what it is to be that thing. In the case of the Ship of Theseus, its essence lies not in the particular pieces of wood from which it is constructed, but in its form, the arrangement of parts that make it a ship. Thus, so long as the ship's form or design remains intact, it continues to fulfill its essence and retains its identity, despite the complete turnover of all of its material parts. However, this conclusion sails us into unsettling waters. Is it still Theseus' ship, or merely a ship that adheres to the same form? Aristotle's framework suggests that while the ship retains its identity as a ship through its form, the additional qualifier of Theseus's, implying a specific historical and personal connection, requires further philosophical navigation. As we leave the ancient shores of Greece, our voyage brings us into the more modern currents of John Locke. In his exploration of personal identity, Locke proposes that consciousness, not substance, defines the self's continuity. Transporting this idea onto the Ship of Theseus, we might consider not the physical continuity of its planks, but the continuity of its function or purpose as essential to maintaining its identity. On this view, one might argue that the Ship of Theseus remains the same ship, so long as it preserves the functional continuity and purpose for which it was intended. Hence, the replacement of its parts does not erode its identity, provided that the ship continues to serve the same role or function as it was originally intended to fulfill. In Locke's view, the essence of the Ship of Theseus lies not in its physical construction, as Heraclitus would have us believe, nor its form, as Aristotle would argue, but in the continuity of its function and the recognition of its identity across time. As our philosophical odyssey continues, we approach the docks of Thomas Hobbes. Unlike his predecessors, Hobbes presents a challenge to our previous philosophers with a scenario that complicates the question of identity even further. Imagine, Hobbes suggests, that as the planks of the Ship of Theseus are replaced, the old planks are collected and used to assemble a new ship. Now there are two vessels, one that's been gradually refurbished over time, and one reconstructed from the original parts. Hobbes poses the question, which, if either, is the true ship of Theseus? Hobbes' scenario forces us to consider not just the continuity of form or function as Aristotle and Locke might, but the continuity of material and relevance of the original constitution. Under Hobbes' gaze, the Ship of Theseus becomes a battleground for competing notions of identity. Is it the material continuity of the original planks that anchors the ship's identity, or is it the continuous function and recognition of the ship under its original design, even if none of the original materials remain? One might argue, following Hobbes' line of thought, that the reconstructed ship, being made of the original materials, claims a closer physical connection to the historical Ship of Theseus. However, the refurbished ship maintains its functional and formal continuity, possibly retaining its identity as the Ship of Theseus in the eyes of society and history. One thing is for sure, there are no answers to be found at Hobbes' harbour. Echoing a typical philosopher, he leaves us befuddled. Our philosophical voyage now takes us to the realm of Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz, who, attempting to answer Hobbes' challenge, introduced a dissecting principle, the law of indiscernibility of identicals. This principle asserts that if two entities are identical, then every property of one entity must be the property of the other. Put another way, if there is any property that one entity has but the other does not, then the two identities are not identical. Hence, if your answer to Hobbes is that they're both the Ship of Theseus, then Leibniz has presented you with a problem. If the ship that Theseus originally sailed is considered identical to the ship after all of its parts have been replaced, then every property of the original ship must also be the property of the refurbished ship. However, properties such as being made of the original planks, or containing parts that directly was touched by Theseus, no longer apply to the fully refurbished ship. So, according to the strict interpretation of Leibniz's principle, this implies that the refurbished ship and the ship that was originally sailed by Theseus are not identical. You must choose to sail only one of them. As we sail into the waters of David Hume's philosophy, we raise the flag of empirical skepticism and inquiry. At the heart of Hume's exploration of identity is his bundle theory, which posits that what we consider to be the self is nothing more than a collection of perceptions and experiences, continuously flowing and changing. There is no underlying essence of self beyond this bundle of perceptions. Translating this theory to the Ship of Theseus, Hume would argue that the ship is not a single continuous entity with an essence that persists over time. Instead, it's a collection of parts and perceptions, planks, sails, and the experiences of those that observe and interact with it. The identity of the ship, then, is an ever-changing bundle of properties and experiences with no fixed essence. Our minds, Hume suggests, are inclined to impose unity and identity on collections of parts and experiences, creating the concept of a continuous object or self when none actually exists. So the debate over whether the Ship of Theseus remains the same ship after all of its parts have been replaced is rooted in our psychological tendencies rather than any objective reality. The ship's identity is a construct of the human mind, which seeks patterns and continuity even in the face of constant change. For Hume, then, the Ship of Theseus serves as a poignant illustration of how identity and continuity are matters of human perception and convention, rather than intrinsic properties of objects themselves. The ship's identity changes as its parts are replaced, not because there is an objective change in its essence, but because the bundle of perceptions that constitute its identity has changed. In today's world, the Ship of Theseus sails beyond ancient philosophy into the realms of science, psychology, and popular culture. The paradox finds itself resonant in the field of biology, where the human body undergoes a constant process of cellular replacement. Over the course of several years, nearly every cell in your body, every plank, if you will, is replaced. And yet, you still consider yourself the same person, don't you? But should you? This has a great many implications for many domains. For instance, in a theological standing, which version of you goes to an afterlife? After all, these planks change who you are, do they not? The paradox also has implications for the restoration and preservation of historical artifacts. When an ancient monument or artwork undergoes extensive restoration, with original materials replaced or supplemented, we must ask, is it still the same object? The Ship of Theseus reminds us that the answer is not always clear-cut and that questions of authenticity and continuity are complex and multifaceted. What precisely are we preserving? An essence? A function? Or just a vague bundle of human perception? As our voyage comes to an end, it's clear that the Ship of Theseus isn't just about planks and nails, it's a vessel for exploring the deeper questions of existence, identity, and continuity. We're challenged to think critically about the nature of objects, the relationship between form and matter, and the persistence of identity over time. The various interpretations we've encountered along the way, from the flux of Heraclitus to the functional identity of Locke and the bundle theory of Hume, demonstrate the enduring power of the Ship of Theseus to inspire philosophical reflection and debate. As for me, well, from an ontological perspective, that is, a purely factual state, absent of human opinion and experience, I think Heraclitus is correct. The ship is never truly the same from moment to moment, as the river of time constantly flows, changing the vessel in subtle and profound ways. But we are human, and from that perspective, I believe Hume to be, as usual, the captain. Just as a ship is more than the sum of its planks, sails, and rigging, our perception of identity is a complex bundle of impressions and ideas, held together by the forces of habit and belief. Well, this has been fun. It's sometimes nice to take a break and take a little deep dive into a philosophical concept that most people know about, thanks to Trigger's broom, let's be honest. That's how most people know about Theseus Ship. If you would like to see more videos like this, then do let me know. And of course, share. Just share the video. Just do it.